facing this danger. This is the greatest showman! He is floating on air now! He's going to sit it back. Dawn, bang! Down he goes. They love it!
Hello, I'm Harbir and welcome to the AFL and the AFLW Multicultural and Diversity Footy panel. Our panelists today are Rajbir and Tash. Hi, ladies.
Hi, Harbir. Hi, Tash.
Round 6 in the AFLW was not the exception this week, filled with surprises and erratic results, except for a couple of teams more into winning with some form of consistency. The round began last Friday with Hawthorn in a tight finish, defeating the West Coast Eagles by 3 points, while in the other Friday evening game, the first AFLW South Australian derby saw the honours go to the Adelaide Crows, which crushed Port Adelaide, which failed to kick a goal by 60 points. Saturday in Western Sydney, the GWS Giants beat Carlton by 17 points. The Geelong Cats managed to sneak home by 1 point against the Western Bulldogs as Collingwood got lucky and just beat St Kilda by 2 points, while Richmond was also fortunate in putting the Gold Coast Suns away by 4 points. Sunday turned out to be a demolition day as Brisbane carved the Essendon Bombers up to the tune of 44 points. Melbourne crushed the Fremantle Dockers by 30 points and North Melbourne annihilated Sydney by 66 points, only allowing the Swans opposition to score one behind for the entire match. It was a crazy weekend where two of the expansion sides failed to kick a goal. What do you make of this, Rajbir?
Oh, absolutely. Isn't that very crazy? It seems like it's becoming a trend. We are going goalless, in at least one of the games. We'll talk more about those two games as we go through the round 6 games. It was a brilliant game of footy we saw a few first, and then there were few surprises we had, and this started with a clash between Hawks and Eagles on Friday night. It was a second win for the Hawks of season 6. We saw some really neat hand passes by the Eagles, which resulted 3 goals through Swanson, Weston and Roberts for the Eagles, with the likes of Jess Tuffin, who made a comeback since 2019. She had her last goal against Bulldogs in 2019, and she played a brilliant footy. Her performance, we saw that with 3 goals and some really good contested marks. The scenario was not very different for Hawks, from the around 5 games, where they conceded 26 points in quarter 1 against Swans, and they had the same scenario in against Eagles in round 6 as well. But they know how to come back from behind and then walk away with the win. That's really nice.
Yeah, now Hawks are a bit on the roll at the moment. So yeah, definitely a good win, and especially close wins always helps your cause. That makes you gel well and prepare you well for the other games.
Yeah, absolutely.
The Eagles lost 2 times in a row now as well.
Yeah.
So Hawks, even though they had that pressure, still got over the line.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, and Port Adelaide versus Adelaide Crows. It was the first AFLW showdown we had in Adelaide, and it was one-sided affair. Even though I think fans really enjoyed it, it was a bit of disappointment for Erin Phillips. But for talking about the Crows, Chelsea Arundel had her first showdown medal for her 3 goals and 27 disposals. And moving on to the next one, we have Giants-Carlton game. After a record-breaking loss to Adelaide Crows in round 5, they bounced back and won against Carlton with 12 points. I think the strategy they had this time is they shared the load throughout the game rather than depending on one particular player, and they just kept on going, and had their tackle pressure on the Carlton players.
And in the next game, Geelong beat the Bulldogs by 1 point, which was such a close game. The Doggies actually scored 3 goals in the last quarter, but it just wasn't enough for them to get over the line, and it was a really, really close game, that one.
That's right, and we thought absence of Georgia Prespakis would have made any difference, but no, Geelong Cats proved it wrong. Nina Morrison and Scott stepped up, to fill up for Georgia Prespakis.
Yeah, exactly. So it just shows that the team really stepped up in that moment as well, which was great. And in the next game, game, the Pies defeated St Kilda by 2 points, which was also a really close game. So Eliza James actually scored that last goal, and it was unbelievable as well. It was her 19th birthday, so it was really what an amazing result for her to get that win.
Absolutely, isn't it a wonderful way to celebrate 19th birthday? And Saints were not very bad, with the tackle pressure. They were actually, were leading that stat, and but Collingwood had their way to come back, handle that pressure, and that's probably helped them, having this win.
And that was like a very bad miss right at the end from the St Kilda player, and bring back that memory of Nick Rivol's miss in front of the goals. So, all in all, St Kilda could have won that one, but then Collingwood, they love winning the close games as their AFL team as well. So,
They just held out strong, didn't they, in the fourth quarter? It was very close.
Definitely. Great game.
Reminds me back of the AFL Collingwood games. How close were those this season?
1 or 2 points always, Yeah.
And then the last game that we had was Tigers defeating Gold Coast by 4 points. That's four in a row for the Tigers, which is a really fantastic result for them. And they were ferocious in that last quarter.
Yeah, and just like Pies, they came from behind and to take over Gold Coast Suns, and they made sure they are still in top 8, and they are keeping their finals hope alive with this one.
Definitely Richmond, I think they're picking at the right time. They're definitely giving a good stint towards getting into the finals. And on that note, we'll be back after the break with more reviews and from last weekend's AFLW games, so stay tuned. Welcome back. You are with the Multicultural AFLW Footy Show. Last Sunday was a demolition day with all games ending in big wins and big losses for the defeated in Essendon, Fremantle and woeful Sydney Swans. Tash, please tell us what happened.
Yeah, Harbir. So Brisbane actually defeated Essendon by 44 points. So looking at that, Brisbane had 14 inside 50s to just 1 in the first quarter. The Bombers really struggled to get it out of the centre circle, and they really just dominated. It just showed that that's why they're number 1.
Yeah, and I think they learned the lesson from, the last round loss to Tigers, and definitely they kept their pressure, from the first quarter itself on Bombers, and we know Bombers are really strong as well. So I think Lions had the strategy for them very well. The way they played, a huge credit to Lions.
And a bit surprised with the Essendon loss because they've been one of the good expansion sides and they've been fighting really well. That much of a difference doesn't really go with their character, but yeah, Brisbane played really well. That's why they're on the top. And Melbourne defeated Fremantle
by 30 points. Yeah, exactly right. So the D's kicked 4 unanswered goals to really close the game there and defeated Freo by 30 points. And Freo's pressure was pretty good, but just wasn't there in the end. And that's why Melbourne got the win.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, with the likes of, Haley Miller and Min Storm, it was a very close contested game until the halftime, but then Melbourne had some other plans and they just, started kicking goals and they just didn't know how to stop.
Exactly. And it'd be really interesting as well the next few rounds, and third on the ladder, so it'd be interesting to see how their next few rounds go as well. They've been playing pretty well.
Yeah, a bit of a pressure on Melbourne with Taylor Harris, Darcy Pearce in there, so big names in there. And North Melbourne and Sydney, 66 points again. Big win.
I just can't believe that the Swans were scoreless. So 1 point for the whole match. What do you think went wrong there?
Or probably, I think Swans is like at the moment can't get their mojo right. That's all I can say. They haven't been able to stick to their guns in any game so far, and they badly need a win. I think it will be a huge thing for their morale at this stage. If they don't get a win, it's going to be really hard for them.
That's the only club left, I think, to register a win this season. But I think it's just a matter of time. They will also have the winning moment. I do believe in Swans.
Yeah, and if you look at North as well, so Randall kicked 3 goals. We had Jasmine Garner kicked another 2 goals. So they were just on the ball the whole game.
Definitely.
Yeah. Thanks, Tash, for this for summarizing last 3 games. We really had amazing round 6 game. But I wanted to talk more about a couple of games. A point where where we need probably the third umpire review. We should bring it in the AFLW games as well, because there were a couple of moments in round 6 where it was felt that the goal was touched by an opponent, but that probably was not really the case. So what are your thoughts about it, Tash?
Yeah, I saw that as well, and I think it's always going to be a topic that comes up regardless of whether it's AFL or AFLW, and I think everyone's got a different opinion on it as well. Like, looking at that game, I know some people said that it was touched, I know other people said that it wasn't untouched, and then when the umpire makes his decision, there's always a bit of controversy, isn't there?
Yeah, but although I don't know how accurate it's going to be, because AFL is still struggling with that kind of decisions, with all the sneakometers in, with all the review system in. So definitely it needs to be brought in. At least we might get a little bit more consistency where it's like quite obvious that that has happened, that has been touched. So at least we know that that's going to make a lot of effect on that. So in those cases and those scenarios, definitely it's going to help if we could bring that extra review in.
That's right. I know we will always have, controversial points, even with the third umpire review. And I know what you mean, what happened in the Tigers finals game with the tumbling.
I was just about to say that. We even had the technology there, and there was still controversy around that goal, whether it was a goal or not. So, it's always going to be a topic, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Before we go into this week's game previews, these are the few things in the AFL that need some addressing from the hot on issue and the annual silly season trades and draft. With this week's unrestricted trade and the looming restricted argy-bargy coming to a head, not to mention settlements with very lucrative, really fat, long-term stay-at-home contracts to Jordan De Goey, Harry Mackay, Charlie Curnow and Dustin Martin. It also looks like Tim Torrenta is moving to the Tigers, Brodie Grundy is Melbourne-bound, while Blue Paddy Dow is looking for a new club, and surprise, surprise, former Carlton player Liam Jones, after standing down for a year due to COVID protocols, may be going back to the Bulldogs. Rory Lobb and Luke Jackson are still in the limbo, waiting for trades. And finally, Kevin Sheedy spat the dummy at the appointment of Brad Scott as Essendon's head coach, labelling it as untenable and threatening to design from the Bombers board. Some big weeks ahead, ladies.
Oh, yes. I think this has been one of the busiest season for the trades. I'm sure there are lots of important trades that are going on, like you mentioned. The first player who got swapped is Bobby Hill from GWS. Now he is Magpies.
Yes, I'm so happy about that.
Yeah, congratulations. I'm sure you would. And I think De Goey, like you mentioned, he was so close to go to Saints, but he is sticking to Magpies again. Another good news for you.
Deep down, I knew he was going to say the Pies.
I think it was just the clause that was keeping him away that they wanted to put in. I think,
which I think is reasonable, to be honest, because it's not a clause that's in anyone else's contract. So I think I know people kind of put up a bit of weren't really sure about how that clause was going to work, but I honestly think that he had a bit of a point there.
Well, yeah, but he definitely needs to keep in check now, because everyone would be watching him, and especially the media attention that he gets, and he will be getting, so he really need to watch for that. And then Carlton, big names are signing up for them, and especially Harry Mackay. I think they've done a great deal in getting him signed on for this one. And as you mentioned, I think the other trades that are looming around at the moment, Brodie Grundy, I think another player which Collingwood would be paying, and he might be playing for some other club.
And two amazing ruckmen if he moves over to Melbourne as well.
Definitely. Yeah. And definitely they're losing a good age, Luke Jackson. But Brodie Grundy and Max Gawn in one team, it's huge, and especially a team like Melbourne, it'll make a big difference.
Yeah, that's right. And if they trade for, they went to go ahead with Brodie Grundy, Melbourne probably have to think what do they trade for Luke Jackson. I think that's going to be a big question for Melbourne. And
the other thing as well, I know that with Collingwood, they obviously prioritised Jordan De Goey, but losing an amazing ruckman for the side. So,
definitely.
It's going to be a big challenge, I think.
Yeah. Now, Cameron fill in good shoes, but Brodie Grundy is Brodie Grundy. If he's in his peak form, no one can stop him.
Exactly right.
Yeah, thank you. And we will continue with our AFLW previews for this week and tips right after this break. Welcome back to the program. This week in the AFLW poses some questions on which sides will indeed finish in the top 8 in 4 weeks. The way the ladder is shaping up, any team producing some sort of form over the next 4 weeks is in with a chance, provided they are consistent at winning their last 4 games of the home and away season. Tash, your previews, please.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you for that. So I think looking at the ladder, it's like you said, it's very up in the air. We've got four games left, and most of the teams are on around 4 or 5 points as well. So anything can really change there.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think the way things are shaping up with this ladder, a lot of team can sniff a chance, as we mentioned before as well. Richmond, they're sort of going up as well, and they have this tendency, if they can be consistently improving, that's how they can get into the top 8.
And now's the time as well. Now's the time to really step up and win the next 4 to get up there.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And I think what I find interesting is the position of the last 4 in, top 8. The Kangaroos, Cats, Bulldogs and Tigers. I don't see Bulldogs in the top 8 in the next 4 rounds. I think, but I would like to see Essendon in the top 8. I believe they have the ability, and the talent for the likes of Maddie Prespakis. They can really step up and, can bring their team in the top 8.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So looking at the AFL and the AFLW, and they're really clamping down really hard on rough play. Have you noticed that within the past few games?
Yeah, no, definitely they are. And we've had a few players that have been put off and been sanctioned to play for your games. I think they are coming with heart. Although the ferocity in these AFLW games, a lot of people are liking that as well.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure how much it's going to benefit the AFL competition as such, but definitely looks like it. They're coming hard on that.
It's good to. That's a good point. It's good to see very nice tackles. Not the rough one. I wouldn't stress on the rough tackles, but you really good tackles in AFLW as well. But yes, we have seen the cases of Tyler Harris, which was really tough. Which was really rough tackle she had, and I go with the AFL decision for 1 match suspension she had, I think, for that one. And then Georgie Prespakis, she had 2-match ban. I think in round 5. So for the rough tackle she laid on Saints player.
Yeah.
So it's good to have see the tackles in the footy, but probably not the rough ones.
Well, that's what I was just about to ask as well. Do you think that those were valid calls from the AFL, pulling them up on that and suspending them for a few games?
Probably not the Georgie Prespakis. I didn't find it that hard, the rough one. But what are your thoughts, Harbir?
Yeah, look, well, I think AFL is mainly concentrating on what they've got the vision in the future. So how they're perceiving the game in the future. I think that's why we've had that issue in the AFL as well. Where they're saying that the tackles haven't been rewarded that much. So I think looks like
they're taking the decision early.
Yeah, they're taking the decision earlier so that it doesn't get too far for them to come back. And I think because they're really concerned about concussions at the moment.
And it's definitely good for players, AFLW players.
It's a big thing as well.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a big thing. Looking at the next game, like West Coast Richmond. So looking there, like West Coast have been playing pretty well.
Yeah,
so that'll be a good game.
Yeah, definitely. It was a very close game, last one as well.
Yeah, but Tigers' future is on the line. I think they will fight really hard for this one, keep themselves in the top 8.
And they're 8th. They're just 8th on the ladder. So that'll be a very important game for them.
And Swans.
And Swans, unfortunately won't be making the finals anytime soon.
No, I think they are still, getting to know the environment, and because it probably is a bit overwhelming for them, to come up, to travel every week for a new game to a new environment. So,
and hopefully it's a better season for them this for next year.
Yes,
for the Swans.
And Gold Coast are doing well anyway.
Yes, and they are at number 9 if I'm not wrong. So it's a good chance for them to be in top 8
and really close to Richmond as well.
Yes, that's right in terms of percentage. And Crows Dockers game, I assume this would be a close one. It could be because Haley Miller's Dockers start really slow in this season, but they are stepping up, and we can see their potential in the last couple of rounds.
It has a potential of being the close game, but I think Adelaide might.
They will have the advantage of their home ground as well.
That's true. And North Melbourne, Brisbane, so interesting. Brisbane's first on the ladder. Imagine if it's an upset from North. They've been playing really well, especially with this last game. And 5th on the ladder, that'd be really interesting to see. What are your thoughts?
I see this one is going to be another close game
Close
because we have seen Kangaroos are really doing well. The way they are playing in the season is amazing. So for me, it probably is going to be a very close one.
This game.
Yeah. Now, look, I think North Melbourne might like to make a statement in this one, but beating the top leaders, and they can do it. However, I think Brisbane, like they're high in confidence at the moment, and they might just be a little touch too good for North Melbourne this stage.
Yeah,
especially if
and
they put on that pressure as well.
Yeah.
yeah, that's right. And we have Hawks Port Adelaide. What do you think about Hawks? They are playing very well in the last 2 rounds, and now they have Jess Duffin in their team.
And they're both bottom 8 though, so it'll be interesting. So if you look at the ladder, 15th and 16th.
They both are from the expansion side.
Yeah.
I believe Hawthorn might have a run on this one.
Yeah, Hawks, I think they're on a roll at the moment. Sometimes that momentum carries you forward, and then we will see what happens in that one. And then Essendon versus Geelong. Look, again, probably a fight from Essendon, you reckon?
Yeah, I do reckon. I think they probably would make to, have a comeback from the last round 6 lost to Lions.
Yeah.
But we know Geelong Cats did really well without Georgia Prespakis. So you never know. Yeah.
And then final 2 games, so Melbourne Bulldogs. Another close ones, you think?
Yeah. But I think Bulldogs really need to up their ante a little bit, the way things are. So otherwise they will lose their spot in the top 8, as you mentioned. I won't rule them out yet, obviously, but because they got the experience. But
they really need to work on their, kicking efficiency and the pressure. I think so. If they and the especially in the inside 50s, if they can, work on those points, they probably have a chance to, beat Melbourne.
If they can hit the scoreboard as well.
Yeah,
I think one thing I've seen with a lot of the AFLW sides is that, I don't know if you've realised this as well, but there's so many kicks inside 50, but it's just translating that to the scoreboard.
Oh, that reminds me of this game we had. I think it was Lions game in round 6. The fun fact was Lions hit the goal post not once or twice, but 5 times.
Yeah. Oh my God.
And lastly, we only got one
I'm
game
going
left.
for the Pies.
Okay. Collingwood was a GW.
Collingwood all the way.
I hope you're thinking here, not here. That's fine. You should with a Collingwood fan.
Yeah, and that brings to my tips for round 7. I'm going with St Kilda, Richmond, Gold Coast, Adelaide Crows, North Melbourne, Hawthorn, Essendon, Melbourne, and Collingwood.
Oh, well, I'm glad you're going with Essendon. Thank you, Rajbir. Well, that's all we have for you this week. You can also watch us on Adelaide TV, channel 44, Friday, 6:30 p.m. on Aurora Foxtel at 1 p.m. Saturday, and on the NEMBC YouTube AFL. You're listening to this podcast on the Community Radio Network, and the AFL Diversity News in 8 languages can be heard during the AFL home and away season on NEMBC member diversity radio stations throughout Australia. I'm Harbir Singh, and from our panelists Rajbir and Tash, good night, and our panel will be back with you next week with more of the AFLW.